Bicentenary Community Committee has decided to make the Open Air Museum its major project to be considered for bicentennial funding. It includes the Military Museum, the Maritime Museum, Supernova Hands-On Science Museum and a number of others, but it does not include the Tuggerah Lakes collection. The chairman of the committee, Margaret Henry, says she's called on experts from museums from around the country for their appraisal of the collection, and the response has been lukewarm.
I believe there are some good pieces in the collection. I've spoken to people associated with museums in Canberra, at the War Memorial Museum, and in Sydney, and they can see that there are some useful pieces in it, but they certainly wouldn't call it a military museum. It's a collection built up by Mr. Hughes over a number of years of relics of World War II.
She says she's afraid that if the collection was included in the Open Air Museum, that it would drain the funds from other worthwhile projects like Supernova. The collection is being transported to Newcastle from the Tuggerah Lakes area on Monday, and it's to be housed in the building in Zara Street in Newcastle East until permanent accommodation can be found.
Around 130 cars were on show at CN Park today, almost double what organisers had planned on. Newcastle's Jaguar Car Club arrived in force. One in particular, a customised Jaguar, brought many admiring looks. In the restored class, there were Oldsmobiles, Model Ts and Buicks. Later models of GT Falcons, which have now become collector's items, were also on show. There were Triumphs, MGs and a Bowl Nagari for the sports enthusiasts. But perhaps the most unusual were the collection of street rods. Those cars that have been lovingly restored, most at great cost, and often from rusted bodies and parts found all over the world. Tony Webster's Model A Ford is acknowledged as one of Australia's top street rods and has won him many prizes. It cost him $150 to buy, but is now on the market for $25,000.
In another display of what can be achieved by enough hours in the workshop, veteran vintage and post-vintage cars worth over $1 million were on show at the Hillsborough Germania Club to raise funds for the Smith family. Many of these beautifully restored cars were discovered as rusting piles of junk, called basket cases by vintage car enthusiasts, who don't really like to keep too close a track of just how much time and money must go into putting them back into showroom condition. Top car of the show by popular vote was Alan Powell's 1929 Hudson.
Winds gusting up to 25 knots faced the skiers in the annual Pulbur Island Classic, but it was just what the doctor ordered for Australian team members who faced similar rough conditions in Spain for the 85 world titles. The judge, one of those team members with Rory Brown and Murray Hackett, was the eventual winner after leading the field away after a pretty late start. Next home was Moonshine with Crackers in third position overall.
The much-prized award was school captain
Congratulations.
Wonderful
to see you are.
Mrs. Alma Tate and its Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Richard Taylor.
Won this
The Oval
award.
Board nominated
We're very proud of
the
you.
National Tidy Towns competition,
Smile, you've done
resulting
something
in
for
wins in two metropolitan
And all the
categories:
communities.
Schools
Something
Environmental
really
Care Improvement Program
area.
and the Best Youth Environmental Care Program. In short, school students have been working to improve the look of their school with painting, gardening and tree planting. A greenhouse is being developed for the purpose. The students have also worked to improve the look of public parks in the New Aston area. School principal Mr. Jack McDonald says the program has reduced vandalism and increased environmental awareness.
Well, Mark, we feel that when people are involved in various things, then they take a great deal more pride in them. There's a much more caring attitude that's engendered amongst the children. We hope also to to beautify the school area and to be involved in beautifying and helping in the environment of New Lambton itself.
At Harker Oval last night, these men were running for a place in Newcastle's representative side, which will take on Canterbury in the Herald Challenge Cup at the International Sports Centre on March the 9th. Stan Barwick's job is to determine which of the players is fit, and to do so he made them run 8 440-metre laps of the field. The crunch will come on Sunday night, when 17 of the fittest players will be picked for the representative side. Newcastle lost the previous 2 Challenge Cups, and coach Terry Panowitz says the deciding factor was fitness.
Previous 2 years, we've held both the sides, Parramatta, up till the last 10 or 15 minutes, and it has been our fitness, because of the club's training earlier in Sydney, something we had to overcome. We've designed the course on tonight to try and give us an idea of the fitness of these players, so that we can make up a course or a strategy, whereas we can bring their fitness right at the top and really compete against Sydney clubs.
Realistically, what are our chances of winning?
Well, as I said, it's the fitness, and some of these fellows haven't been at it near as long as what the Sydney players have, so we're going to have to compensate for that, and that is a crash course, in other words. So if we can check them after tonight, design something for them, really heavy, then we've got a real good chance. The needs of the handicapped continue to be a major issue in the community, as witnessed by the strong turnout at last night's meeting. The Life Without Barriers Foundation first organised Awareness Week during the International Year of the Disabled in 1981. Last year's promotion was extremely successful, the highlights being a popular show by disabled puppets at the Garden City Shopping Centre. To consolidate the success, a coordinator was appointed last night to take over the organisation from the foundation. His main task will be to raise sponsorship for the event from local business houses. Spokesman Mr Andrew Buchanan outlined some of the aims of this year's promotion.
I think probably more so this year, trying to integrate the physically disabled and intellectually disabled into the community. The intellectually are the ones who are often left out. We often ignore them in the community, and at the same time to extend the activities not only through Newcastle City, but throughout the Lower and the Upper Hunter.
Perhaps the most difficult thing about entering William Bowman's home is wondering where to look first. Mr Bowmore agrees he has one of the most diverse collections in Australia, everything from Chinese pieces from the Tang and Song dynasty through to an Islamic collection. But the most eye-catching are the paintings, which with many galleries and museums throughout the world would love to have in their collection. The names are astounding: Gainsborough, Modigliani, Delacroix, Cézanne, Constable, Moreau.
I think the Niccolo dell'Abate, because it's a 16th century work and it's had some famous owners, and there's been a lot of research and a lot of history done on it. Parmigianino it was given to Titian until I think about 1964, when there was an exhibition in Bologna where he did most of his work. The Louvre established that it belongs to Niccolo dell'Abate. And there is another one in the Berlin Museum also by him, but consensus of opinion says that this is the better painting of the two.
Mr Bowmore also has a 12-piece collection of Rodin sculptures, recognised as the largest Rodin collection of importance in the Southern Hemisphere. Soon, he says, he hopes to add the crowning glory to that collection.
There is another famous sculpture which I'm very keen to purchase, and which would be the crowning part of all this collection, and I will know in a few days whether I'm able to raise the funds to buy this particular work.
You obviously want it very much.
Well, it's cost a lot of money to be very close to $200,000, and unless you speak of these sort of figures, well then you mustn't speak of a museum of quality.
Last month, only 7 millimetres of rain was recorded compared to the annual average of 91 millimetres. For that reason, this rain has replenished some water supplies, but will it be enough to ensure we won't have a drought in the Hunter in the near future? District Horticulturalist Mr Clary Beckingham.
Later on in the year?
Well, I think it is certainly welcome news from the welcome respite with the weather. It has been currently happening. That is, we're in a continuing dry spell. Not quite a drought yet, and if it continues, the soaking rain of some 1 to 2 inches and not too heavy, it could help to just delay the onset of a drought.
What about water storage on the farm? How's that holding up?
As I understand it, holding out very well. Of course, where some producers have been pumping heavily to supply water for their crops, they'll be getting quite low and they'll be starting to worry, and so this rain will be welcome.
Well, the building's been financed over a very long period, actually. We set up a building fund many years ago because we were in cramped quarters. We knew that eventually we would have to shift. In fact, we should have shifted much earlier than we did. And the funds have gradually accumulated over the many years to the stage where we're able to build this building. We haven't placed any levy on any members, and in fact, union fees were not increased this year.
What facilities can you provide here that you couldn't provide in the old building?
Well, the problem with the old building was that we were operating with about 7 or 8 people in a building that was built for only 2 people. It was extremely cramped. We have one of the best industrial libraries in this city, if not in the state, in any union office. And this building will have such facilities as a proper library and will allow us to expand our current library facilities, which are used quite extensively in the court proceedings on behalf of our members' interests. And of course it will provide such things as interview rooms where we can privately take a member with a problem and sit them down and talk to them, where previously we had to talk to them in situations where other people could overhear.
In Newcastle yesterday, teachers met and resolved that they would not allow the sacking of fellow member Richard O'Neill. The department has dismissed O'Neill because of his refusal to accept a forced transfer from Bega to Bathurst. He says his departure will mean that courses will have to be dropped at Bega High School. In other motions in the Newcastle meeting, the teachers rejected 2 separate superannuations schemes proposed
they were not prepared to introduce the change. The Minister and the Premier about those further negotiations. What we now have, and it was given to us at a meeting by Rand, just the things until we were aware of what it would cost. I'll announce threefold, really.
Meanwhile, federal public servants in 4 states will be working as normal today following yesterday's mass meeting, which voted to end their campaign of industrial bans. The Newcastle Union Workers Club voted overwhelmingly for an amended pay claim, which will be sent back to the Arbitration Commission. Originally, public servants wanted a more than 8% raise, but are now asking for 5% more for keyboard operators and 6% for some clerical.
In the original hearing before the conciliation.
The 84-wagon train is a symbol of the SRA management and union's newfound cooperation to increase tonnages following last month's bitter strike. Although it's only at the trial stage, it's hoped that this coupling of trains will become a regular occurrence. The 1.5-kilometre train will be divided along the way, with 42 wagons continuing to Ulan, while the other half will head to Singleton. SRA spokesman Mr Gary Jones.
In an effort to improve the delivery of coal to the port, the service unions have agreed to trial these 2 trains today, and if the trial is successful, they will endeavour to continue to operate in this manner until approximately the 9th of April, after while the Hunter Valley upgrading and track strengthening is in progress.
Of his 27 horses in work, 2 stand out. Saturn Sands, who has won in excess of $70,000 from 8 starts, and this boom filly, Ravage, who has amassed an amazing $100,000 in prize money, also from 8 starts. Ravage was odds-on favourite in the 1984 Penfolds Classic, a race the filly just won.
After 200, Harris hands and heels on Ravage. He's about 3 chimes square and Victory Prince. A minute to Mondial, but 100 left to go. Ravage in front, getting tired. Victory Prince racing greenly is coming after Ravage, who's paddling. Ravage in front, Victory Prince on the outside, lunges.
Just made it, yeah. She had 56 kilos, which was a fair bit of weight for a filly. And the horse that ran second went on and won the Size Produce Stakes, and she actually might have broke down that day too, because she pulled up sore after the slipper, and the vets seemed to think that the chip was there for a while, so she could have done it here in the Penfolds.
And what's happened since then? She's obviously had to attend it to.
Yeah, she's had an operation, had the chip taken out, and she's been sound ever since, so I just hope that she continues to stay that way.
She looks in fine fettle here this morning.
Yeah, she's very fit, very fit. She's just been for a swim, matter of fact, and she's up against a top-class Pearl tomorrow in them 2 colts, At Sea and Royal Troubadour. They're both very good colts, and they meet her pretty good at the weights. It's just hard to get a race for her because she's a 3-year-old filly, and the fillies races are all longer now, and she's only a 1,200 metre horse.
Mr. Mulock made the announcement at a dinner in Nelson Bay to mark the start of the 2nd annual Festival of Port Stephens.
In the draft estimates for 1985-86, I provided for $400,000 towards the construction of that polyclinic.
The small hospital, called a polyclinic, will comprise 8 beds for recuperative care and 4 beds for emergency and casual patients. A landing pad for the rescue helicopter service will also be constructed so that serious cases can be transported quickly to Newcastle. Mr. Mulock told last night's dinner that Nelson Bay needed the polyclinic because of its remoteness from Newcastle. Port Stephens has been without a hospital since 1981, and some elderly people have moved from the area, saying the health service was inadequate. The polyclinic will be built in Kerrigan Street, and the building will be supervised by a community planning committee. Mr. Mulock also announced an expansion of paramedic ambulance services.
Such of your $9,000, we'll match that dollar for dollar for the provision at the earliest possible opportunity, which is almost immediately, of paramedic facilities attaching to your ambulance service.
Tomago Aluminium plans to dump its toxic waste in clay cells. It says this is the most advanced way of coping with the problem of waste disposal, but there are those who disagree. Mr. Bob Morgan of Shortland has worked as a coal miner and prospector all his life. He says clay in the proposed dumping area at Wallaroo is not impermeable. He says a large proportion of it is quartz and gravel, and the wastes will simply seep through into the water table. He says another problem is that the site is on a fault line caused by an extinct volcano, and he claims if the company digs in that area, it will strike water. So you think they haven't done their geological studies properly?
They haven't done it, I'm sure of that. And the mines department could have put them on the right track very easily. Even so, the mineralogy department said it wasn't the right place for it, to look around for somewhere else.
The Newcastle Ecology Centre also opposes the Wallaroo dump. As Mr. Bob Burkhardt explains, its major worry is who will monitor and maintain the site in perpetuity.
They say, well, we'll pay into a maintenance fund which will look after the site in perpetuity. This maintenance fund is $3 a tonne. That's a fair amount this time, but in 50 years, if there's 5% inflation, that's only worth about 23 cents a tonne. Now, in 50 years, when a company stops, or around about 50 years, then all maintenance of the site has to be covered by that $1.25 million or so.
The Merewether Coastal Protection Group wants the government to immediately dedicate those parts of Glenrock Lagoon it already owns and to acquire the rest of the land. And that's where the disagreement began. According to one resident who attended, those who own land in that area want to have a say in what happens to it, and they believe they're being railroaded by strident environmentalists. But despite this opposition, the mandate was given to the Coastal Protection Group to push for gazettal of the area as soon as possible.
There is under threat.
Mr. Bryce Gaudry.
Well, Mark, this group arose out of the proposed commercial development by the Caldwells, and at the public meeting the committee was given the go-ahead to seek ways to protect that area. And we feel that the gazettal of the Glenrock State Recreation Area is the very best method of protection for the total area between Hickson Street and Dudley.
You've already received